everyone. Welcome to Our Story Goes On. I'm Cinthya, and we are on episode 37. Now, I know that probably sounds a little strange because we were doing seasons with our episodes. And I know our last episode, I had said that we were on the 16th episode, but we have decided as a whole that we're actually going to drop the seasons and just use episodes from now on. It's just easier that way. It's just going to flow better that way, especially because we don't really intend to have such a large break like we did between season 1 and 2 and between seasons 2 and 3. So, it just makes the most sense. So, yes, I hope everyone is doing really well. Thanksgiving was a couple of days ago, and I know that Thanksgiving is I guess it depends on how you look at the holiday, but I know it could be good or it could be bad for some people. And that is actually what we're going to be talking about today. I wanted to talk a little bit about post-Thanksgiving blues in a sense. And I also want this to also be like an episode that maybe people can go back to even for the Christmas, Hanukkah, holidays and Kwanzaa. Can't think of anything else. But because I think overall it all kind of goes into one, and I just figured that today would have been the best time to talk about it because Thanksgiving just ended a couple of days ago. Um, but yeah, so that's what we'll be talking about today, and a little bit of a check in for myself. I'm feeling okay today. I don't always like saying that though because okay is not an emotion. I'm feeling neutral. Feeling neutral. My Thanksgiving was very, very good, and I'll get into that as we talk a little bit more into the episode. But it's like, I don't want to say I have like cabin fever, but I've been home since Wednesday afternoon, and I'm recording this now on a Saturday. So it's been a few days like in the house and a lot of commotion and chaos, so I'm feeling pretty neutral. But I'm not ready to go back to work though. Not ready to go back to work on Monday because I know Monday is going to feel pretty bad. I just have a really bad feeling about that. But so yeah, that's really it with me. So let's just get right into it then. So like I mentioned before, Thanksgiving, like many of the holidays around this time of the year, I should say, can feel like a catch-22 in a sense. It can feel pretty amazing to be with like your family and friends and loved ones, but it could also be a reminder for many people of what may be missing in their lives or, something else that could be triggering for them in a sense. Um, there is a significant amount of pressure to be around family at this time, but if we're not close to them, it can increase feelings of anxiety or stress, perhaps even some sadness. It can also increase your urge or wanting to perhaps drink or smoke because you want to be able to deal with the stress or anxiety that might come with seeing family and friends. So that's also a whole, different aspect of it. Now, on the other end of things, a person actually may be feeling down or depressed when their guests have actually left their home or when they've left their family's house, right? Because it could be both ways. Like you could be really close to your family and not want to leave or not want the day to be over because this is usually a time where you could all be together as opposed to the rest of the year and everything too. But these are all normal feelings and it will pass eventually. So even if you're feeling increased anxiety because you don't necessarily want to be around your family or the complete opposite where you do want to be around them and you know that this is not forever and cuz Thanksgiving usually brings people together and that could also bring up like I mentioned a lot of sadness if you are having to have them leave your house or whatever that may be. So for this year, actually, me and Henry, my husband, had actually hosted at our house. And this is the very first time that we've ever done that. I've talked about it before, but we did buy a house this year. And it was very nice to have a day where we could actually host both my side of the family and his side of the family. And my parents have seen my house, my sisters have seen my house, my friends have, but it was different when we actually had both families there at the same time. So it was actually very nice. I won't lie though, I was stressed leading up to it. I actually got pretty sick last the week before Thanksgiving I had a really bad cold that just took me out for a couple of days. And so a lot of like the prep that I wanted to do wasn't able to be done because I was sick. And so I was like laying down most of the days, or whenever I'd come home from work, I just did not have the energy to prep whatever I needed to prep. So it was a little bit stressful, but I made to-do lists, and my sister helped me out with that too because she knew I was really stressed. And I just wanted to basically make an impression for everyone to come to the house and make sure that everyone felt comfortable and also enjoyed themselves too. So it was very, very, very nice. And I was actually pretty proud of everyone to show up on time. There wasn't my parents were a little bit late. They were a little late, which I was actually pretty surprised about. But for the most part, it was just a very, very great night. And it was also nice because one of my cousins was there, and me and my cousin and my sisters were all very close. We're the same age, and I love him and I adore him. And it's always nice when he's able to spend time with us. And I actually thought it was really nice because he lives all the way in New York, and it's he's the very first cousin that actually saw my house. Well, except for on my mom's side. This is on my dad's side. So he was the first one. He like kept saying, how great he felt being there, and he was complimenting our house, and it was very nice. So we all spent the day together, like for Black Friday. Like we were all just literally chilling for the whole day, watching the World Cup. And so for me, it was actually like I was experiencing that sadness when they left the house, because they left Friday night and they all had been there, for basically 24 hours. My sister's my cousin, my sister's boyfriend, and obviously me and my husband. So it was kind of like, but when they all left, I looked at Henry and I was like, our house is so quiet now. Even though like they weren't there for days, but it was still very nice to have them. And so I kind of felt that sadness a little bit that they had left, and now I was to clean my messy house and kind of get back to reality. So I kind of had those feelings of maybe the sadness when people leave, as opposed to maybe the sadness that people might feel when they don't want to be around family. I am very grateful and very thankful that I've actually had the opposite effect of what some people might have. I have a great family. I have all of that too. So I am very, very lucky. And I know that unfortunately during this time of the year, some people don't have that, whether they don't get along with their family, or they don't get along with some family members, or maybe they just don't have family that maybe they're able to just drive to, right? So that's kind of the good thing about it in a sense. But 'tis the season, right? It is supposed to be the best time of the year, as they say, but people are actually surprised that studies have actually shown that holidays can evoke sadness as well as happiness too. And I actually remember, I guess it was probably last year sometime, and I remember like talking to, or maybe I heard it on the radio. I don't remember, but they were talking about like how Christmas music can actually bring up a lot of nostalgia for older adults, or adults in general, because Christmas music brought back to how you were as a child, right? So it brings actually, even though we all love Christmas music in a sense, it actually can bring up a lot of different memories and triggers for a person, because they're like, I wish I was a kid again, in a sense too. So basically, these feelings that I am describing is what we would call like post-holiday blues. And I think I might have mentioned that in the beginning of the episode. So like I said, it is very normal and it is very common. And it's so common that people have written articles about it. Like I mentioned before, they've tried doing studies on it. And the reason why we call it the blues is because the blues always go away after a couple to a few days. It's not to the point where it's now becoming depression or anxiety. It's just the blues. It's like the same way that after a woman has given birth, they will probably have the baby blues, and that basically means that they're feeling sad, anxious, stressed, but that will usually subside after a few days after they've given birth, unless it goes into postpartum depression and everything. So how do you beat the blues, right? How do you get out of this funk from basically November to the end of this year? Because that's something that you may want to know how to do, and we'll get into that right now. So the first thing I would recommend is to reach out to someone that you love and care about that you may not have seen during Thanksgiving, right? So maybe you didn't see a friend or another family member. Reach out to them and see if they're able to hang out, or if they're able to maybe even FaceTime, do anything virtually together. So that way you're not alone and you're able to fight that loneliness, if you will, or that sadness by talking with someone that you really love and care about. And I know a lot of times too that sadness or anxiety can, or the blues, can kind of decrease motivation and drive to see your friends and everything because you may just want to curl up on your couch, and I totally understand that. But at the end of the day, it's still important to tell your brain that's not the way to go, even though you really want it to. It's not helping to do that if you are feeling that sad about things. So reach out to someone, see if they're able to hang out, and perhaps even reach out to this person before, like the week before Thanksgiving, to kind of set this up. So that way you guys have it planned already. So it's not really last minute for them in a sense. The next thing I would recommend is to practice gratitude or thankfulness. Like I said, 'tis the season. Happy Thanksgiving. So list things that you're grateful for. And if you are feeling sad about being away from your family, think of that as, try to embrace that in a sense of like, hey, I have a family. I have a family that loves me. I have a family that I love being around. And that's something that you can realize that that's a lot of gratitude to be able to experience. Because, like I said before, some people just don't really feel that way or don't have that luxury. So, that could be an example of how you can practice gratitude. And it could also be about perhaps being able to have a couple of days off from work, hopefully. Hopefully. I know that there are definitely some people who have to work and retail, or still, I know my sister had to work from home the day after Thanksgiving, even though, she was at my house, but she still had to have her laptop open. She still had to do all that. So I know not everyone has a luxury, of course, of not having the day off on Friday, but trying to find gratitude in that somewhere in a sense too. Another thing I would recommend is, if you're not maybe able to reach out to a friend, perhaps maybe reading a book or watching a movie. And also within that is to try to avoid being on social media, because social media might increase some feelings of sadness or maybe even comparing and everything. Because I know a lot of people post their Thanksgiving dinners and Friendsgivings and all of that. So if you know that social media is something that you know is a little bit triggering for you, try your very best to stay off of it. Another thing I would recommend is just to accept and sit with your feelings, right? I know that this might feel a little bit weird for some people. Like, I remember when I was hanging out, not that I remember, this literally just happened. So yesterday, like, I remember, I said it again. When I was with my family, I just like had this feeling of, I don't want to say dread, but just feeling of like, ugh, I know they're going to leave after we're done with this movie. And that made me feel sad. And so I really actually had to sit there and think, like, how come this makes me feel sad? How come this doesn't make me feel happy that I'm actually with them? Right. So accepting my feelings and sitting with them was really important, even if it was just for 1 minute. And also being present in the moment and thinking, don't think ahead, don't think about them leaving, think about how it is to be with them in this moment and really cherish it as much as you can. So that's also really important with that too. So those are a couple of things that you can do to hopefully, beat the blues and all of that too. And like I said, these are normal feelings and they will eventually pass. And I hope that these will be able to help someone even when it comes down to the longer holiday, of which is Christmas, Hanukkah, all of that, because I know that that's a longer stretch usually. I know Christmas is Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. For the children and adolescents who are in school, they have Christmas break. And obviously for those in college too, they're coming home and everything. So I know that that's a little bit, I don't want to say like worse, but it is a little bit more intense, probably more pressure again. And it's also colder. So if you're living on the East Coast, so it's also, that kind of plays a role in it too. So now I also wanted to mention about the pressure that some people might be experiencing around Thanksgiving when it comes to eating. So for those who are living or experiencing an eating disorder, this is also a very difficult time for them too, because that's what Thanksgiving is, right? It's food. Like, the amount of food that we had at my house was crazy. And that was a whole other thing too, where my stress was coming in. Like, okay, it's not like people took some home, but I mean, there was just so much of it. So there's still a whole tray of rice, and we still had a whole tray of chicken. And so Thanksgiving is food. It's food and gathering. There's really no way around it. Yes, I know that Christmas is, most people tend to have a Christmas dinner, right? So, but it's a little bit different. The pressure's not there as much as I think Thanksgiving is because that's literally what the holiday is. Um, so I think it's really important to also think about that if you are one to experience that, or if you yourself don't experience that, then try your very best, or I don't even want to say try your very best, just do it because I feel like this is just so disrespectful. However, don't ask people or don't comment on your family or friends' weights, right? I know that like I said before, Thanksgiving or the holidays are usually the time of the year when a lot of family members are able to get together as opposed to the rest of the year. And for some reason this is some people feel like it's a like a gateway, or they're allowed to do something like that just because they're family and talking about, oh, like you've gained weight or you've lost weight, like what's going on. And so we don't exactly know a person's experience, we don't know what they're going through, and so commenting on someone's appearance or weight is just a big no-no. And especially like I said, the pressure of eating, people are looking at you like, oh, why aren't you eating, or oh my god, you have so much on your plate, things like that. It's just really not necessary. And I think that's another reason of the pressure that might people might feel during this time or during Thanksgiving, because they feel like, okay, is my family going to comment on something? Maybe you're just not really a big fan of Thanksgiving food like myself, and you just don't really feel like maybe eating so much. It doesn't necessarily mean anything to do with my weight or, anything like that too. So it's just important to keep that in mind as well. And I hope that this can, like I said, help someone in that moment too. But I know that there are a lot of people who are able to experience Thanksgiving without any of this pressure, like I said. But I think at the end of the day, it's just a well known thing that there is the post holiday blues. And I think a lot of it also has to do with returning back to work on Monday for most of us, right? Like I said, except for those, I guess, who are working the weekend. But for those who do have to return to work, that also brings up a lot of different feelings and emotions because now you have to go back to reality. And if you work long hours or if you commute far, it's a whole different thing too. So I think that plays a really big role too on how you're going to be feeling leading up to the days of the Thanksgiving weekend. So I think that plays a pretty big role in it too. But like I said before, try your very best to beat those blues by doing all of those things. And also your very best to not forget about the other coping skills that we've talked about here on the podcast, right? Just the general coping skills that could help someone that might be feeling sad or anxious or stressed, right? Like moving your body is very important still, even though I'm sure with with the feeling of just being maybe not like the best or whatever. Um, but moving your body, talking with someone, listening to your favorite music, reading a book, just trying your very best to maybe spend some times outdoors if you can, and go from there. And I also think that this is a probably a pretty good time too to maybe start thinking about like your New Year's plans. Now, we had an episode about this last season that we talked about like new year, new goals kind of thing. And I don't like to use the word resolution because it's never really a good word to use because many people have resolutions and it usually fails. It's like statistically, not to sound like a Debbie Downer at all, but I try to just change that word. Goals is probably a little bit better because goals can be short term, they could be long term. And what's another word I like to use? I can't think of it right now, but I know we use the word goals. I forget what other people use. I'm sure it'll come to my mind as soon as we're done recording. But yeah, so like that way the pressure is not so heavy. Oh my God, I have to think of what I'm 2023, new year, new me kind of thing. I have to figure this out within a week. Start off slow, maybe, right? Maybe you want to accomplish new things in the new year. And if you start thinking about it now, perhaps that pressure won't feel as much when you are actually there, the day before New Year's Eve and everything too. So something to think about as well. So I hope that this will help someone. And like I said, maybe you guys can also refer back to this episode when it comes down to the December holidays. All right. So we're going to end today with an affirmation. So I have it here. So the affirmation is I am welcoming peace and love to my life. And I hope that's able to help someone because in this time of just craziness, in a sense, peace and love is important. So I hope that helps someone. And I hope at the end of the day, everyone had a great holiday and is going to have a peaceful upcoming week with work. All right, take care, guys.